All right, you are set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, James. I want to welcome everybody to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of May 12th, 2021. If you could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if I could, I'd like to have Noreen do the roll call, please.
Surely. Chairman Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Claffey,
Here.
Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Havens,
Here.
Commissioner Linares,
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Here.
Commissioner Woods,
Here.
Commissioner Braverman,
Here.
Commissioner Gill,
Here.
Commissioner Haggerty.
Here.
You're all set.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're going to sit
You're welcome.
the alternate Commissioner Braverman for Commissioner Fox. And as far as the approval of the agenda, I think we're just adding some, the approval of the minutes for April 28th, 2021.
Correct, Mr. Chair. That is the only change.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Renata. And next thing on the agenda is public participation. But before I go into that, I would just like to state that petition 24-21, it was a church event at 155 Lower Place, is being postponed. And it'll be on in 2 weeks. So if anybody's from the public is on here for that, I just wanted you to know so that you didn't wait through the meeting. And so now we'll go to public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Speakers limited to 2 minutes. Please use a raise hand function. If there's anybody from the public.
We have 5 individuals present. At this point, it does not appear that anybody's interested in speaking, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I did get one email from a resident that asked me to read this into the minutes. So if there's no objection, I'll do that. This is from Fred Callahan, 99 Cedarwood Lane. To the members of the Newington Town Planning and Zoning Commission, I speak as a 75-year Newington resident who has lived, worked, and owned a business on the Berlin Turnpike for my entire 75 years. I served as president of the Berlin Turnpike Businessmen's Association for many years. In the late 60s and the 70s, when I was 91, when I-91 was built, I fondly remember the large celebration we all had when street lighting came to the Berlin Turnpike. I have witnessed the Berlin Turnpike go from total devastation to the thriving commercial strip it is today. To which I say thank you to all the past Newington Town Planning and Zoning Commission members and past town planners. They all played a large part in making the Berlin Turnpike a thriving commercial strip it is today. I want to go on the record as being strongly in favor of the project being proposed at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. The Berlin Turnpike is the perfect location for a project of this magnitude. There are no residential neighborhoods nearby that will be negatively impacted by this type of development. Berlin Turnpike is a 4-lane highway, which is more than capable of handling any additional traffic created by this development. This development would be a big boost to Newington's grand list which Newington desperately needs. All the residents of Newington will benefit from this increase in the grand list. Take a look at the neighbors, Farmington and Weathersfield and West Hartford, Rocky Hill and Glastonbury. All these neighboring towns have a high-rise buildings. All these towns benefit tax-wise with these high-rise buildings. Town of Berlin has just announced they are also having a mixed-use development before their TPZ. The Berlin Turnpike is only 1 mile south of 3333 Berlin Turnpike. In closing, I have heard the developer of 3333 Berlin Turnpike is a high-end developer with a great reputation. I urge all the members of the Newington TPZ to study the 3333 Berlin Turnpike mixed-use development, hold the developer's feet to the fire for high-end project, then vote to approve this development. Thank you to all the TPZ commissioners for taking the time to volunteer and serve on the TPZ and help make Newington a great town. Fred Callahan. Okay, is there anybody from the public? If there's nobody from the public, we'll go on to zoning enforcement officer report.
Good evening, commissioners. You have my report before you. It's busy, a little busy in March. Are there any questions, concerns?
Any questions from the commissioners? Anything special you want to talk to us about, Eric? We
No, I
assume that-
did get a couple of, did approve a couple of chicken permits after you guys approved that. I think 3 or 4 so far.
Okay,
And a couple of complaints, which I've discussed with the property owners, and a couple of them actually come in and gotten the permit afterwards. So seems to be working well.
does that provide you the tools now to take care of that issue?
It's a little easier when, especially when the people realize that, you know, there's an avenue available for them. You know, they just have to, some regulations they have to meet. Some people still want the coop where they have it existing. So, you know.
So you still
We're
have,
dealing
no matter what, you'll still always have problems, basically.
We're working on it. So.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions concerning the zoning enforcement officer's report? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate it.
No problem.
We
Thank you,
will-
commissioners.
We will move on to any remarks from the commissioners? Okay, without any objections then, let's see. Oh, we have approval of the minutes next. Could I entertain a motion to approve the TPZ minutes meetings for 4/28/2021?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Sobieski, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make everybody aware that there's a Senate Bill 2412, I believe it is, up there that's being sponsored by Desegregate Connecticut. And I read the bill, talked to a couple of people. They're still pushing for conversion of basements into apartments. They're pushing to convert garages into apartments. And one of the individuals I talked to said that, well, our existing zoning laws allow that. And I told her, no, they do not. What they allow is for accessory apartments for family members only. And so just to make everybody aware that that bill is trying to make its way through the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. Motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Havens.
Thank you, Commissioner Havens has a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to accept the minutes of April 28th, 2021. Next thing on the agenda is our public hearing. And if I could have my vice chairman, Commissioner Claffey, if you could read the procedures for public hearing, I'd appreciate it if you have them.
James, can you put them up on the screen, please? The order of proceedings at public hearings shall be as follows. A, convening by chairman. B, reading of the notice by commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. Identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by applicant limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitation should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall an extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. Renata, did you have something?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted, before you read the public hearing notice, to ask if the commission members would be willing to consider the first 5 petitions that are public hearing items all together. As I had explained in my memo to you, this is one large comprehensive project, and I believe that separate special permits that are sought for certain uses such as restaurant and brewery cannot really be examined for the impact outside of understanding the scope of the entire project. So I wanted to say this because it will impact how the legal notices are read, and if you're willing to allow the applicant to present it all together as one project, and then once we're up for voting, we will split everything out and act accordingly.
Okay, I think that's a great idea, Renata, and we'll open it up for discussion from the commission. I don't have a problem with grouping them all together. I believe we'll be able to gather the information better that way. So I'll go to Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, I have one question. I don't know if we can actually act on all of these tonight or not, because I think we have to wait for wetlands approval. And that would be my only concern. I have no problem.
You don't have a problem grouping them together at all. And just so you understand, they will be separated when and if they get voted on.
Correct.
All right.
Commissioner
Claffey?
I haven't quite finished.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Sobies. Go ahead.
Hoping to at least keep them open for one more meeting just to make sure that wetlands approves it before we approve it. That's
Yeah,
all I'm asking.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, wetlands, our Conservation Commission issued all of the permits last night.
Yep. Commissioner Claffey.
I guess my only concern is I agree with how to do it. I would just ask when the applicants are presenting, if there is a area that's specific to one of the petitions that's a little more in depth than the other, can they just mention, if they remember, like the specific area or petition number, just so if we don't kind of get confused and think that they were talking about a, let's just say where, for example, where the detention basin or pond may be in this property, if it's even there. If something gets really kind of challenging, that we as a commission understand that you're talking, well, this is the area at X, Y, Z, just so we kind of have a placement.
I understand completely. So we will have them reference the petitions, and I'm going to ask them to go in order still and address these, and then talk about the rest of the project.
Okay.
We'll group them together, but they'll address each one of these in in an organized manner, but still talking about the entire project. So at least,
Thank you. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? So I gather then everybody's in agreement that it's okay to group it together?
Yes,
I
Mr.
am.
Chair.
Okay, very good. Okay, Renata, is there a special way that we're supposed to read this now?
Not a special way, but once these legal notices are presented, they should all be read into the record because you're effectively opening public hearings on each one of these items.
Okay, so we will read each one then. Commissioner Havens, if you could read the petition 1921 and then 2021, 2121, 2221, and 2321 into the record, I'd appreciate it.
Who was that for, Commissioner Havens?
Yes, is,
Oh, no problem. All right.
okay.
Notice is hereby given that the Newington Town Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 12th, 2021, to consider the following petitions. Petition 19-21, special permit, section 3.19, and associated site plan to construct a residential apartment development in the PD zone at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. Owner, the Rocky River Realty Company. Applicant, HJG PC Newington Investor LLC. Petition 20-21, special permit, section 3.19 and 3.15, and associated site plan to allow a restaurant in the PD zone at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. Owner, the Rocky River Realty Company. Applicant, HJG PC Newington Investor LLC. Petition 21-21, special permit, sections 3.19 and 3.15, and associated site plan to allow a place of physical activity or recreation in the PD zone at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. Owner, the Rocky River Realty Company. Applicant, HJG PC Newington Investor LLC. Petition 22-21, special permit, section 3.19 and 3.15, and associated site plan to allow a brew pub or a brew pub restaurant in the PD zone at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. Owner, the Rocky River Realty Company. Applicant, HJG PC Newington Investor LLC. Petition 23-21, special permit, section 3.19.3, and site plan approval to allow a retail development in excess of 40,000 square feet in the PD zone at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. Owner, the Rocky River Realty Company. Applicant, HJG PC Newington Investor LLC.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Renata, do you have anything that you'd like to start off with on this?
No, I believe that most of, well, all of you and most of the town residents know which property this is. It is a former Eversource site on the right-hand side of Berlin Turnpike next to Express Kitchen. And you know, as I explained in my memo, it's a large project that consists in part of residential and commercial, and the applicants can describe it much better than I can.
Okay, thank you very much, Renata. We'll go right to the applicant to make his presentation. And if he could follow our petition somewhat, briefly address these issues, and then expand from there. Commissioner Sobieski, you have a question?
Yeah, I think Renata might be in error. It's not next to Express Kitchen. It's on the other side next to Raymore and Flanagan. Am I correct?
Express is on the other side.
Express moved across the street.
Yeah, across the street. That's what I thought. Thank you.
The same side, though. Because Express Kitchen is the one that just came back for the granite approval.
Yes, they did. They're on
Yeah,
the other
Right
side.
next door.
They're on the northern side.
The northern side of the southbound lane.
This development here is on the southbound side of Route 15.
Yes.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Is the applicant here?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Town Planner Bertati, excuse me, Assistant Planner Hinckley, members of the staff, and Madam Clerk. For the record, my name is Chris Smith. I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Alter and Pearson, and I appear before you this evening concerning an adaptive reuse or redevelopment proposal of real property known as 3333 Berlin Turnpike with a mixed residential and commercial community providing for 269 multifamily units or dwellings and approximately 80,000 square feet of commercial retail use. The subject property is located in the Planned Development or PD Zone District, and the uses that are proposed and are going to be presented to you this evening are allowed in the zone subject to special permit review and approval. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if we can, I know Dennis Godier from BL, if we can share the screen. Perfect. And as indicated in the legal notice that you just went through, well, the subject property again is located in the Planned Development or PD Zone District on the westerly side of the Berlin Turnpike. You can notice the location map up in the top right-hand corner, where the property again is on the westerly side of the Berlin Turnpike at the southern commercial gateway entrance to the town of Newington, and we'll address that that aspect a little later relative to the proposal and compliance with your regulations and POCD. The property fronts the Berlin Turnpike on the easterly side, and it does have access to Payne Road on the southerly side. Again, it comprises approximately 25 acres, and it's located in the Planned Development or PD Zone District, where the uses that are proposed are permitted subject to special permit review and approval. And if we could please go to the next slide. And specifically, the uses that are proposed, there's 5 special permit applications. And this is in the order, not necessarily of appearance on your legal notice, but just in the regulations. One is for the restaurants under 3.15.3. The second, following again the order, the numerical order in your zoning regulations under 3.15.6, places of physical activity or recreation or gyms. 3.15.13, a brew pub or a brew pub restaurant use. Under 3.19.2, a residential use or residential buildings. And under 3.19.3, retail developments in excess of 40,000 square feet. And again, the proposal is a mixed use community development involving essentially residential, 269 multifamily dwellings, and again, approximately 80,000 square feet of residential, commercial, which would include restaurant, gyms, and a brew pub or brew pub restaurant uses. As you're aware, a special permit is for a use. So we're asking you to approve these specific uses for the subject property. 2 quick housekeeping items at the outset. The first is, you may recall, acting favorably upon 2 text amendments that we had presented to the commission at your last meeting. And again, we thank you for your support with those amendments. And the second housekeeping item is something that was referenced by Town Planner Bertati, and that is that we did receive wetlands approval from your Conservation Commission last night for the regulated activities associated with this mixed-use development. So we do have wetlands or Conservation Commission approval. What I'd like to do now, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, is just briefly introduce the members of the team. If we can have the next slide, that would be great. So we have Grossman Development Group, who is here on behalf of HJG PC Newington Investor LLC, who is the applicant. And on behalf of Grossman Development Group, or GDG, we have Mr. Howard Grossman, who is the president and managing principal, and Jamie Anderson, who is the senior project manager. And Grossman Development Group is essentially the developer of the commercial component of this mixed-use development. On the residential side of this proposal, on behalf of Criterion Development Partners, we have Mr. Jack Englert, who is Executive Vice President, and Principal of Criterion. Myself as Land Use Counsel. From BL Companies, we have the Director of Land Development, Michelle Carlson. Our Senior Project Manager, Mr. Dennis Godier, who's kind of spearheading and quarterbacking the presentation this evening. We'll be turning it over to him shortly. And our Traffic Engineer, who will be providing you with a summary of his traffic study, Michael Dion, also of BL Companies. Our licensed environmental professional is Mr. Ryan Roy, Principal of New England Region for Whitestone Associates, who have offices in Rocky Hill. Dr. Donald Poland will be providing you with a summary of his fiscal impact analysis concerning the proposal. And Dr. Poland is the Managing Director of Planning and Strategy at Goldman and York Advisory Services with offices in East Hartford. From the architectural side, involving the residential component, we have Christine Castaldo, who is the Director of Housing for Market Square Architects with offices in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And then Mr. Anthony Amata, who is the Principal of Amata Emma Architects with offices in Hartford, along with Evan Mazer, will be providing you with a review of the architecture associated with the commercial component of the development. And what I'd like to do, next slide, please. Just provide you with a quick review and summary of the development experience concerning the two partners who are partnering up for this mixed-use community proposal. Grossman Development Group has over 4 decades of development experience, specializing in mixed-use development, retail leasing, and investment sales, not only throughout New England, but in particular, they do have sites in Connecticut. And then with next slide, please. With the residential component, Criterion Development Partners, they have approximately 70 years of combined experience in developing successful multifamily communities with distinctive living environments. And Criterion has permitted, developed, owned, and or managed approximately 5,500 multifamily units with a total project investment for those units of approximately $1.18 billion. So they do bring to the table, as was indicated by one of the citizens who sent in that letter, which we appreciate, of support. Both Grossman and Criterion do bring a vast amount of experience with commercial and residential developments. And in particular, if I can have the next slide, please. Both groups have partnered to construct the what's known as Lakeway Commons up in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. And this has been a very successful mixed-use community that is very, very similar to what's before the Planning and Zoning Commission this evening with regards to the subject property. And as you can see, it's a mixed-use community development with residential to the rear and the commercial component up towards the front along the main highway. And again, this is just an example of the type of work and product that both Grossman and Criterion bring to the table with this application. And unless you have any questions for me, what I'd like to do at this point, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, is turn the presentation over to Dennis Godier, who again is the Senior Project Manager from BL Companies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Smith. If I can have the next slide, please. Good evening. For the record, my name is Dennis Godier. I'm a Senior Project Manager with BL Companies from Meriden, Connecticut. I am a licensed landscape architect in the state of Connecticut, as well as a certified planner by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I'll provide a brief overview of the site design tonight, as well as the existing conditions, some of the housekeeping items of meeting the bulk standards of the requirements of the zoning regulations. And then I'll be turning it over to Ms. Michelle Carlson to go through stormwater management, erosion control, to name a few items. And then we have another slate of experts to discuss other aspects. And Mr. Chairman, we will endeavor to keep this to the different petitions as you had requested. If I could have the next slide, please.
Yeah, if you could hold it, if you could go back one slide for 1 second. Could you talk about the surrounding, the abutting area there? That's all PD and commercial area. Is that correct?
But the site is located in the PD zoning district as well as the majority of the surrounding. Express Kitchens, you can see, is off to the right-hand side. Best Buy and Raymore and Flanagan on the left side of this plan. And yes, we are on the southbound side of the Berlin Turnpike, so on the western side of the Turnpike, with frontages on both Payne Road and the Berlin Turnpike.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Christina.
Next slide, please. As you are likely are aware, the site has seen its history of development in the past. You can see on the right-hand side slides that demonstrate just the history leading up to prior to its demolition in 2016, where it had remained an Eversource facility for training and warehousing. The site, over 50% of it had been developed. More than that had been disturbed at some point through landscaping or hardscape in building. Next slide, please. The site had been recently demolished, and what you are looking at today is generally how it stands in its conditions at the moment. Still, nearly 50% of the site is disturbed with impervious coverage, either it being compacted gravel or bituminous. And then the blue lines are delineating the wetlands, which the wetland map amendment had been approved last night, as well as our application for regulated activities associated with the development proposal before you this evening. Next slide, please. This evening, I will start on the left side of the site, which is on the west side, and that's the residential petition, and that would be petition number 19-21, if I recall correctly. And all of the other ones I will discuss in aggregate would fall on the commercial side or the east side of the parcels or the parcel. Currently, the 25-acre site is comprised of 4 separate parcels, which we would be consolidating into 2 parcels. The residential would contain approximately 13.3 acres. We are proposing 269 residential units, which is below the density that had been that allows for residential of 1,500 square feet per unit on the site. There's 3 buildings. Each building is 4 stories, pitched roofs, and we remain below the maximum height of the 4 stories. And we'll talk about the architecture on the residential side a little bit later in our presentation. The residential, your zoning requirements require 2 parking spaces per unit, which would be 538 spaces, which we can accommodate. We are respectfully requesting a deferral per your zoning regulations, which is section 6.11K, where we are permitted to request and you are permitted to approve a reduction of 20 up to 25% deferral of construction if not necessary. That would bring us down to a ratio of 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which our client has typically used in their development through their history, and can attest to that if you have any specific questions. So that would bring us down further. The initial application had suggested approximately 57 spaces, which would be on the western side, or I'm sorry, on the southern side of the development. But we would like to defer those parkings more closer to the building to provide more green space in softscape next to the residential housing. The parcel would have the required frontage. of a minimum of 50 feet, which would be along Payne Road. In this case, we would be providing 60 feet. And that would be accomplished because we are allowed to request the reduction because of the zone amendment that was became active yesterday on the 11th. We have a minimum of 10 acres of site, and we would have an easement for secondary access onto the public road of Berlin Turnpike through the commercial development.
Excuse me, Dennis, could you show us where the parking spaces are you're asking to waive them and add more green space? Could you point those out to us?
Where building number 3 is located, you'll see there, it says 114 parking spaces. So there would be portions of parking in that location, as well as portions where building number 1 is located. You'll see the handicap spaces of building number 1. I'm a little bit up, Jessica, up a little bit further up there on the north. Yep, over in that location.
Okay. And you're going to add green space instead.
The intent would be to add, yes, the intent would be to add green space in that location. And by your regulations, we would have to put the infrastructure in if you would ever at some point deem it necessary to for the owner of the property to construct that. But so all the infrastructure would be sized accordingly.
Any owner operator is comfortable with the reduction compared to his other facilities?
That is correct. Criterion has typically constructed and built their facilities for the 1.5 parking spaces per unit, and feels confident that they would be able to accommodate that. And if they needed to build more at a later date, as per your regulations, they would be required to do so, or they would, because they wouldn't have a successful product to support their tenants.
Thank you.
Some of that parking is also going to be within garage spaces. You can see there's 6 outbuildings sort of on the periphery. There's 8 parking spaces within each. We'll talk more about stormwater management in a moment, but you'll see on the left side, there is a stormwater management basin, which is above grade. That area, along with a dog park, some walking trails, and where you can see the pool and other passive recreational areas would meet the required recreation spaces. And I'm not going to go through all the bulk standards, but I believe that the town planner in her report has identified that we do meet the requirements of the bulk standards for the zoning regulations on the residential component. I will move over to the retail, which is the aggregate of the remaining 4 petitions that we are requesting for brew pub, the 40,000 square foot retail, the recreational component as well, and then the restaurant. So those other 4. They haven't exactly been identified as to where those uses would be. The supermarket, as the plan identifies, shows where the anchor tenant would be located. But the developer would like to remain, maximize the flexibility for having this be an attractive development with maximizing the opportunities for tenants to occupy the spaces. This development will be supported by 418 parking spaces, which meets the requirement of 4 per 1,000, which is the requirement of a shopping center in your regulations that is in excess of 50,000 square feet. We meet the minimum requirement for this parcel of being of the minimum of 70 feet of frontage, where we have over 300 feet of frontage along the Berlin Turnpike. The setbacks, which are shown in red, all of the buildings meet the setback requirements as well. And the building height, which will be demonstrated in the architectural component a little bit later on. Each of the buildings are supported by the required loading spaces. The supermarket has 3 loading spaces, which is on the to the south of the supermarket. There's that L in the building. There's 3 bays that would allow for tractor trailers. And we had submitted with our application how the circulation of the tractor trailers would maneuver and be able to enter into that area. And then you can also see in Jessica, perhaps you could point out the refuse areas, which would be enclosed and screened as well. So there's one that supports the supermarket, another to the left that would support the other two retail buildings, and then one further to the north for the remainder. You can see the site.
Oop, you froze.
Okay, I think we just lost Dennis. It's Michelle Carlson from BL Companies, licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, working for BL Companies headquartered in Meriden, and Dennis is back. So go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, I'm sorry, I froze up there, I guess.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. If we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Just as to show the landscape requirement that we're meeting, the residential component is required to have a 10% landscaped area, which is shown in the dark green. And then the commercial, we are required because of the size to have 15%, which we meet the minimum requirement as well. If you can go to the next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. And then just a little bit more on the landscaping. It was identified before, but there is canopy trees within the parking areas, ornamentals as well, buffer plantings to separate between the residential and the retail. And I apologize, I can't distinguish between the two because literally those are blurred. That's a blurred line with the property line. We have evergreens and ornamentals that are screening the backside of the supermarket as well from the Berlin Turnpike. Next slide. And this is just a close-up to show the landscaping as well. Again, the end islands and intermediate islands will have canopy trees for shade, as well as aesthetics and shrubbery and ornamental plantings throughout. Next slide. And again, shade trees, you can see the buffer planting between the residential and the commercial development on the right side of the screen. Stormwater management area would have the appropriate seed mixtures for the wet conditions that it might have at periodic times. Steep slopes will have a steep slope mix to ensure stabilization early on, as well as through the life of the slopes as well. Next slide, please. And this is just an enlargement of the one of the recreation areas and the upland review area for the wetland in the south western portion. We are proposing, as we had presented with the Wetlands Commission last night, enhancing the buffer area to be more naturalistic. It has already highly disturbed right now because of the operations from Eversource, and we are looking to restore that fringe area outside of the wetlands back to a more natural habitat with such native species as dogwood, the winterberry, maples, and cedar and shadblow. Next slide, please. Lighting has been also designed. These are full cutoff fixtures. They're LED. And you can see from the color coding here in the blue is where we are at 0 foot candles. So nearly everywhere along the property line, even though it's commercial development, we are at a 0 foot candle, except for some portions. There's a slight bleed over the property line on the northeast corner near the entrance drive. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to go through every detail here. I've covered some of these, but these are the two charts that identify the bulk standards for the commercial development on the zoning and showing that we meet the bulk requirements for the commercial. Next slide, please. And again, same with the residential, showing that we meet each of the bulk standard requirements, parking, et cetera, for the residential petition. Next slide. And then I will now turn it over to Ms. Carlson to discuss stormwater and erosion control.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Michelle Carlson. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. I work for BL Companies headquartered in Meriden, Connecticut. I'm going to talk to you about show you the stormwater system. The stormwater management system that's currently on site is still in place. There's limited treatment with that system. There's one hydrodynamic separator and a couple oil water separators that are on there. But for the most part, there's no stormwater quality control. So we're going to implement some controls and detention and better treat the water on the site as part of the development. So Jessica, do you want to go to the next slide? And then I'll take over if I need to, but for now you can go to the next slide. Okay. This is color coded. I'll start over by the Berlin Turnpike. The proposed supermarket, you can see the parking area and the supermarket is going to be collected through a series of pipes, a pipe network with deep sump catch basins with hooded inlets, excuse me, in the blue, and the blue underground detention area is shown next to the supermarket. You know, why don't I take control, Jess, and then this way I can run around better. I apologize. Can you all see my screen? Okay, so the blue pipe system is collecting the supermarket stormwater runoff and the parking lot area. It's going to go into this underground detention system here. Prior to entering the underground detention system, we're going to run it through a hydrodynamic separator for TSS and water quality flow treatment. It'll then enter into the underground system and it'll exit into this collector pipe, which will discharge into a scour hole riprap dissipator that then flows in the ditch to the 56-inch corrugated pipe that's down here. And I can show you, go back here. The rest of the commercial development is going to be collected in this pink colored system. Again, deep sumps, hooded inlets, and an underground detention system. Prior to entering the underground detention system, there's another hydrodynamic separator that will treat the water quality, flow, and remove any additional floatables. It will exit into the same pipe as this system. It's sized appropriately, and out into this riprap splash pad and down into the system before it goes out into Payne Road. This section here, there's an intermittent ditch. I'm not sure if you've been out on the site. Is a riprap ditch that conveys stormwater through here. Then it gets piped in this point, comes back into this open channel, and then is piped again here, and then into the wetland system. We're going to pipe this whole channel. Last night, the Conservation Commission approved us filling in that riprap intermittent water course. It's really a riprap ditch. And that ditch now, the stormwater flowing in there is going to be conveyed in this black and white pipe that will discharge back right upstream of wetland 2 and recharge the wetland area. We also have put a under drain here because we're cutting into this slope area. And so we're putting an under drain along the northerly side so that we can collect any water that might come out. And that's also included in our calculations. There's also a ditch coming onto the site from the northern property. And we are going to capture that and put that into the piped ditch. The residential section is going to be collected in two systems. One is the brown system shown, roof and parking areas, through a hydrodynamic separator to treat the water quality flow, and then into an underground detention system and out here into this riprap area. And then the same theory with the yellow, going to collect the residential and parking area. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to discharge into an open water detention basin that will drain dry and will then also go into the wetland. So what we've done is we've tried to maintain the existing drainage patterns to the extent practical so that we're feeding this wetland in similar locations as to where it is today. Just to blow up if you have any questions, I wanted to. Does anyone have any questions before I go on to the erosion control?
Michelle, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The existing conditions, there's an extensive amount of flow down the roadway that goes to Payne Road and then crosses over. I understand you're going into you're collecting it in these chambers. And so how much of a reduction is it compared to existing conditions because of an existing problem that's over there? I'm wondering whether or not you captured that.
We're reducing the rate of runoff through every storm event, the 1, the 2, the 5, the 10, the 25, the 50, and the 100. We analyzed all those storm events down here in Dennis. I don't see the extension down to Payne Road. Do we have that anywhere?
Yes, I can pull that up if you give me a moment.
Yeah, well, I can show right here, because basically, as you know, Dominic, our
Yes.
discharges are here, the last one, and then this is a ditch that then goes into this closed 56-inch corrugated pipe. And that's the point, at this point here, at the 56-inch corrugated pipe through, like I said, the 1, 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm event, the rate is less of runoff in all those storm events. So we're not going to exasperate any problem here.
Okay.
We're comfortable with that.
Thank
And
you very
also,
much.
just to back up a second also too, these soils are horrible on this site and in this area. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So we didn't take into account infiltration because it's just not possible.
It's
that's
not
why,
possible.
right. That's why the roofs are connected to the underground system, because ideally we would like to take the roofs offline, right, and infiltrate them, but we can't do that here.
Yeah, whatever gravel was there is gone, and now it's down to the clay. And
Yes.
I'm glad that you're capturing the extra water because it's not going to filter through.
Correct. Yep. So we took no infiltration into account. Any questions on stormwater, or do you want me to keep going into erosion control?
You can keep going.
Okay. Okay, sedimentation and erosion control. We basically set this up with 3 phases. To start, we'll put in the anti-tracking aprons in the Berlin Turnpike entrance and over at Payne Road. We have 3 temporary sediment traps that we've sized in accordance with the 2002 Connecticut soil sedimentation and erosion control guidelines. We have drainage, temporary diversion swales that are shown here in green, so that when the site is initially being graded, it'll be graded to drain toward these swales and into these temporary sediment traps. And in the traps, we'll have a fair cloth skimmer, which will help skim the clean water off the top, right? This skimmer here, as the water gets into the trap, the skimmer rises to the top and floats on the surface if anyone hasn't seen it. And then basically, water without the sediment in it flows into the skimmer through this pipe and then out of the system.
Michelle?
Yes.
You have a tracking pad right on Payne Road there at that back entranceway. If
Yes.
that's all pavement right now, why does the tracking pad need to be so close to Payne Road there? Why wouldn't you have it back until the end of the project? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what? That's an extremely good point. So we will move it back. Duly noted. Great point. And then that way, they have to maintain sweeping any sediment that gets in this area, which then hopefully there'll be minimal going on to Payne Road. Yeah, great point. So then in the diversion swales as necessary too, we'll put stone check dams. We will put silt fence obviously around the site to protect the downstream areas and the wetland system. Second phase, we've kind of, worked in and boxed out the commercial section stabilizing any slopes shown in yellow here with erosion control blankets, ringing any stockpiles with silt fence and seeding them, if they're sitting more than 30 days. Again, we have sediment traps, diversion swales. We will move this tracking pad further up. We've also installed 2 tracking pads here at this point between the commercial and the residential development to minimize any soils being tracked back up here. And then in the next phase, you can kind of see the tracking pads are gone. Binder will be down, be protecting any catch basins with, that are needed with hay bales and silt fence and installing erosion control blanket. So it's all done in accordance with the regs. Obviously, we'll have to submit to the Connecticut DEEP for a SWIP permit for dewatering during construction activities, and that'll be a living document. That if the contractor has to make changes during construction, based on how they're working the site, that'll be done in accordance with the regs. And the site is basically balanced. So the goal is to not be trucking a lot of material off the site or on the site, other than, stone needed for pipes and bedding and that sort of thing, and pavement base. And then obviously there'll be an operation and maintenance plan, and it'll be on the drawings that are filed with the town, as well as a written document, part of the stormwater management report. And it'll include, inspection of all the stormwater systems. It'll have recommended, annual maintenance and clean out of the hydrodynamic separators, quarterly inspections of catch basins for sediment and floatables, monitoring ports in the underground detention system, and then just general sweeping and litter cleanup. And that'll be on record and maintained by the development. And that's it for me. I'm going to stop sharing. Jess, if you want to take back over.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me. For the record, Mike Dion with BL Companies. I lead the traffic engineering division with our company, and we are at located in Meriden, as Michelle had said. The next slide. I just want to recap a little bit of the site. And we know it's 269 residential units. We are looking at a health and fitness club, a shopping center with restaurants and other businesses, a supermarket, a bank, and some restaurants. Next slide, please, Jess. And just to summarize some of what we did for our data collection and our traffic study. It's a large development, so we wanted to do a very comprehensive traffic study. So what we did is we took traffic counts at 9 signalized intersections and 4 stop-controlled intersections. We also received traffic counts from the Department of Transportation for their adaptive traffic signal project that's going in. And for any other sites that we needed some counts, we took them, and especially in the AM hour. And what we did is we sent them up to the DOT Policy and Planning Group and had them adjusted for COVID. As I said, they've got the adaptive signal project, they had counts there. They've got, as you can see, historical counts on the Berlin Turnpike that they can compare them to. And they also had some other developments that they compared the volumes to. So we also did a photographic inventory of the site environs. We wanted to verify the roadway geometries and lane arrangements out there, so to make sure that they match the signal plans that we're going to be developing and analyzing. And we also looked at 3 years of crash data along the Berlin Turnpike and Payne Road. Next slide, please. And what we do with all that data is we've got our volume data, and we projected it out to what we call our horizon year, which is the year the site's going to be built and operational. And that year is 2024 for this project. We also investigated if there were any other proposed developments going on that would affect the traffic in the area. And DOT we're not aware of any developments. So what we did is we took our existing data that we had and we projected it by a percentage up to the year 2024. And that gives us what we call our background analysis. Then what we do is we take from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. They have what they call is the trip generation manual, and it is IT is about 60 years old, and it gives the number of trips that are generated by certain types of businesses. So what we did is we took the businesses that we're thinking are going to be in this site and applied the trip generation numbers to that. And what we did is we added those to the background and come up with our build volumes. And again, those have all been up to the DOT, and they were unofficially approved by policy and planning. But we do have, they are up there again for the OSTA process, the step 1 process to get volume approval. So we're waiting on that. Next slide, please. And when we came up with our trip generation numbers, as you can see, we're anticipating that the total generated traffic for the commercial and the residential sites would be about 304 trips in the AM peak hour, 639 in the PM peak hour, and 711 on a Saturday shopping, which is about the 11 to 1 hour. One thing to note on this chart is that the pass-by number, and pass-by traffic is actual traffic that is on the roadway network already, that, say, the supermarket isn't their destination. So this is pass-by traffic that is, they're on their way home, they got to run to the supermarket, and then they continue on their way instead of going back the way they came. Now, DOT criteria requires us to use 20%. The ITE recommends anywhere between 40 and 50% for pass-by. So our analysis is very conservative in the eyes of the ITE and standard practice in other states, actually. So we would actually anticipate there actually being less traffic generated than what we're showing. So this is actually, as I said, ultra conservative. Next slide, please. And this is just a diagram showing the intersections that we did analyze. You can see the site is centrally located, and we analyzed the unsignalized intersections as well as the signalized intersections shown. Next slide. What we do with all that data now is we take it and we put it into a program called Synchro. And what this does is it takes all the traffic signal information, all the roadway geometry information, and it comes up with a delay for every intersection. And with that delay, we can assign a letter grade to it. And as you know, it's just like you're in school, A through F, with A being the best, F being failing, and level of service D is generally acceptable to the public, traveling public. Next slide, Jess. Now what we can see from this is our level of service analysis on the intersections. And you can see that there are some intersections that we're showing as failing out there right now. And they are failing in the future if they're failing now, they're failing in the future. So what we have is our AM, PM, and Saturday analysis, and then the levels of service right below it. We do have a couple of locations where we do go from a level of service D to an E where it drops. But again, I want to reiterate that our analysis is ultra conservative because of that additional pass-by traffic that we normally would be able to take. And I want to bring to the attention of the board that, the DOT does have the adaptive signal project going in on the Berlin Turnpike. And we're limited in our analyses to studying a full peak hour. So it's a full hour of data. And what the adaptive traffic signal system does is it actually analyzes traffic by the minute on the roadways. And with the video detection it has out there and the data that's collected, the adaptive signal actually changes the timings minute by minute along the corridor and the side streets to make sure that the traffic is flowing smoothly. So with our conservative analysis and with the adaptive signal system going in, we would anticipate that the traffic signals would actually work much better than what's shown here. Next slide, please, Jess. And I'm showing here the exit drive from the residential area on Payne Road. And what we wanted to show is that the sight lines are available out there for a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. We do meet the 390-foot sight line criteria. And that's both the horizontal and the vertical down here. So we are meeting sight line criteria. We will have to work with the neighbors to ensure that there's no plantings over 3 feet in their property. And there's currently nothing there. The lawns are very well maintained, and we don't anticipate that being an issue. Next slide, Jess. And some of the improvements we're proposing on the Berlin Turnpike. First off is we're requesting a medium brake with the department, and we're requesting a new traffic signal to be installed. That will have to be installed per their requirements, and it will have to meet the new adaptive signal system that they're installing. It will be tied into that, and it will obviously be reviewed by the department. We are proposing 2 left turn lanes into the site and maintaining 2 through lanes on the Berlin Turnpike. In coming southbound, we are anticipating on maintaining the existing curb cuts for other businesses. We're maintaining 2 through lanes and having the through lane on this side convert to a right turn lane in, and adding a left turn lane in for the businesses on the east side of the Berlin Turnpike.
Excuse me, Michael,
Next
I have a
slide.
question.
Sure.
Mike?
Yeah.
Could I ask a question? From your driveway there heading south towards the Payne Road intersection, existing right now, there's two lanes with 1 turn lane going down Payne Road, which stops short of the best market area. And I'd like to know whether or not your plan widens that 3rd lane, that turning lane, or not.
It does not. We are proposing to carry 2 through lanes through because that lane does drop on the other side. So we are just going to have the 2 through lanes through and maintaining the right turn into the Best Buy Plaza.
You didn't think that you needed to increase the turning lane?
We did not. The analysis didn't show that we needed to do that. And we will, this will all go up to the department. So that's one of the next steps is the OSTA approval process. So we will have them review everything. And if they feel that we need to add the right turn lane in or extend that right lane, they definitely will have somebody else do it instead of themselves.
There's just a bottlenecking there, and it's real. It's matter of fact, in front of this building south of you, the road is wider, and it's just one little small stretch that needs to be widened to increase that 3rd lane. And it almost seems a bottleneck sometimes because people are coming out of Costello Road. You have people coming down the turnpike. I'm just wondering whether or not you could take another look at it. I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Sure, we can definitely investigate that for you. Next slide, please, Jess. I think this is just recapping what we're proposing out there and what we showed graphically for you. So again, we're looking to install a traffic signal and overhead signage to alert the users coming southbound of the lane drop that happens up the road anyway from us. So we're just having it drop a little sooner. We're adding, as we said, a left through and a right shared lane coming southbound, and westbound we are keeping coming out a left through and a right shared lane. Northbound, we are going to maintain the 2 lanes that are there and add 2 left turn lanes with a U-turn capability for anybody that gets trapped and wants to come back south. And the site driveway 2, we are looking to realign it with at Payne Road, shift it over a little bit to increase its usability. And we are insisting that we, install stop bars and stop signs at that driveway per the plans.
Do you have
The next step are.
Do you have a photo of that, Michael? Do you have a picture of where you're realigning the site driveway?
on the site plans. We're just shifting it over slightly to increase its alignment. I don't have that plan.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we could certainly pull that up. There was a comment, and I was going to bring this up a little bit later. This is Dennis Scudero, BL Companies for the record. There was a comment about providing 25-foot turning or radiuses at the curb. So the drive will likely slide over from what we're proposing right now back to its original spot. So that we don't believe will impact the sight lines. So.
Yep. So the next steps in my process is we're going to be going to OSTA, 3-step process to get our traffic signal and median break. I know a resident brought up asking the timeline of that, and that is a 4 to 6 month process just to get through the OSTA. And then it's, actually constructing a traffic signal after that. So any other questions from the commission?
Any commissioners have any questions for the on traffic and the light? Commissioner Sobieski, please.
Yes, I just want to say I think you've done a great job on the traffic, traffic plan. I was working in planning and policy for 41 and a half years, so I think it's a great plan. In the 10 years I've been on here, this is one of the most detailed plans I've ever seen. Again, I want to congratulate you on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stanley.
I was counting on you, Commissioner Sobieski, to find something wrong. Okay, Commissioner Claffey.
The only question I have is more back of, you spoke earlier about traffic entering and exiting the site, but no one's spoken about once everyone gets into this site, regardless if they're going to the commercial aspect or the residential aspect of, you talk about the exit out on the Payne, but is that specifically for all vehicles? Is that for trucks, everything, or is there specific locations for truck traffic that enters off the pike onto the pike only, or are they going to filter back out of the backside? Just could you get a little more into how the site logistics, how you came up with how you're calculating the inflow and outflow of traffic?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah. So for the record, Mike Dion still with BL Companies. How we anticipated the traffic working is the majority of the traffic using the commercial side of it, because coming in off of Payne Road is not the easiest way to access the site. So the majority of the traffic is using, for the commercial, is using Berlin Turnpike. We did have some come in Payne Road from the back, anticipating that it's neighborhood people that know the plaza well and would come in that way. And the Payne Road entrance was, majority of that was going to be for residential use only. And it'll be, again, we had a small percentage coming in from Berlin Turnpike for the residential, as it's, people that know the area well enough and are living there will come in and out that way if they find it easier, especially probably in the morning if things are not open. It might be easier for them to jet right out to the Berlin Turnpike through the empty plaza. So we did anticipate a little bit of that, but it was majority of it split up residential Payne and commercial on the Berlin Turnpike.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
And the residential will be able to cross over to commercial property and exit out on the Berlin Turnpike, correct?
That
Yes.
is correct.
Mike, do you want me to share the site plan? I have it open if you want to show them
Sure.
here.
Does any other commissioners have any questions on the traffic? Or
So there is, just as you can see, there is the connection between the two here, so that they, as I said, the residences can go out through
And
the
here,
Berlin Turnpike whenever they want. And yeah, so they've got access to buildings 1, 2, and 3 from 2 different ways, directly from the commercial side. And, as I said, it's probably in the morning hours. If they're going out north or south on Berlin Turnpike, they'll probably shoot out that way because there's no traffic in the plaza.
okay, very good. Any commissioners have any questions? Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Jessica, if you could share your screen again. And thank you, Michael. I will now introduce Anthony Amenta from Amenta Emma Architects, who will discuss the architectural design on the commercial component. So that will cover the 4 petitions. And then Mr. Amenta will turn it over to Christine from Market Square Architects, who will give an overview of the residential architectural design. So, Anthony?
Yep, thanks. Can you guys hear me? Am I
We can hear you.
coming through? Okay, thanks, Dennis. Thank you, commissioners. We're going to talk about, as Dennis said, the retail section of the development first, which is the east side of the plaza. So if we could, there's something, let me just get my screen. Something's going on here. Hold on a second. We could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I am, just give me a second. Something's not cooperating. Okay, I can't just, it's working perfectly up until about a minute ago. I'm not getting the full slide on my screen, just, wow.
Fresh.
Come on. All right, well, I'm just gonna have to wing it, folks. I can see about 3/4 of the slide on my screen for some reason. It's, fun with technology. So on the lower left-hand corner of the slide, which I can't see, is a key plan, just to tell you where we are. And you'll see in kind of the orange, tangerine kind of orange color is the building that we're looking at first on this sheet. There are, as you may remember from the site plan, there are 3 smaller retail buildings. In the first one we're going to see is called Building A, and we're going to rotate in a clockwise fashion, see Building B, Building C, and then end up looking at the biggest building, which is the supermarket. The supermarket actually is a branded building. As many of these supermarkets are, they come with their own look and feel. And we were able to study what that would be for the site, and we were able to use those images to help inform us to create the designs for the rest of the retail buildings so that they will reflect but not mimic exactly the architecture of the bigger building. So as I mentioned, the orange section looks like one building, but it's actually 2. It's buildings A and B. A being on the left side of your, looking at the top picture or top drawing, we're looking at the front of building A and B. So they are 2 different buildings, but they're connected in the middle with a trellis or a pergola, so that if there is a potential tenant that would like to utilize that space, that's available for them as outdoor amenity space for that particular tenant or tenants on either side. And then to the far right, you can see another covered area there, which could also be utilized for outdoor activity of that tenant on that side. So you're looking, these sheets that we're going to show you are organized the same way, so that the top drawing is always what we're calling the front, or that part of the building that faces the big parking field in the center. And then the next drawing down is what we're calling the back, or the back side. It's the reverse of the front. And then below that would be the 2 sides of the building. So the predominant materials that we're looking at on the customer facing side, we're looking at a lot of glass. That's the predominant feature. The rest of the materials are more of a neutral palette, so that the retailers that will be coming in with the amount of glass that are there, their goods will be highlighted within these large glass areas that continue along the storefront. So the materials other than glass are a mix of materials that we found on the larger supermarket. We have a mix of corrugated metal. We have some different colors of brick. There's a lighter and there's a medium tone. And then we're also using some reclaimed wood product that will also kind of gray out to more of a grayish tone. So a very neutral palette of materials, again, on the customer-facing sides of the building. The rear of the buildings are pretty much the service side. As you can see, they're where deliveries are made, and so that they're relatively free of any openings or window surfaces. This section here, you're looking at the back of the terrace that you see pictured in the front, and it's going to have some wood screens that will allow some privacy on that terrace. So this rear-facing elevation is actually facing the residential portion of the site, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But there's quite a bit of grade difference between this building and the residential portion. There's also a double landscaping feature to create a barrier between this service side of the building and the apartment buildings beyond. The two sides of the building, again, a lot of glass, which would be appealing to the tenants. And then the remainder of the building is a combination of either the reclaimed wood that we're using or the corrugated metal. So you're going to see these, next slide, please. You're going to see these materials as we move around the site. This is building C. It has very similar materials. Here, we've varied the height of these buildings, as you can see throughout. So again, to create not just your typical strip, but to create some interest amongst the potential tenants that will eventually occupy. But the materials tend to be more of what we saw in building A and B, corrugated metal. We're introducing here a synthetic stucco material. That should be a very, very light color. And we have there'll be some areas that will start out as being very neutral, but these areas above the glass allow the tenant to customize their facades to advertise their brand. So you might find an awning there, colored awning, or you might find another type of a canopy, or just another material that they can introduce to give you some flexibility and some variety in the context of the larger building.
Mr. Menta?
Yes.
Excuse me. I have a question. A lot of times the air conditioning units on the roofs become an issue. I was wondering whether or not you designed this with some sort of parapet, and if you could speak to that a little bit. That
Yes.
comes up a lot with the commissioners. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. The height of the building is much taller than the roof structure. So we do have a parapet that surrounds the building. And at the lowest point, I believe that parapet is about 4 feet tall. So even at the lowest height here, the units will be fairly unable to be seen from the ground plane. If you happen to be on the 4th floor of the residential unit behind, or the 3rd floor, obviously you're going to see the entire roof. But but yes, the shoppers those units will be masked from the public.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. So not to be repetitive, but the rear, we use some of the same materials. We try to create a little interest by not having continuous material, but breaking up the masking again with both the height and also a material change along the backside. Most of the backsides of the building, as you can see in the key plan of building C and building D, are pretty are not really visible to any of the users of the plaza. They really are kind of the backside, and then building A and B, as I mentioned, are shielded by a large landscape buffer. So if we move now to the next slide, we start to look at building D. Building D has a sort of an L shape to it, if you will, just to fit into the site more directly. And it's repetitive in terms of the palette of materials, the height variation in the corners to be taller, higher glass in those corners as well, and some canopy movements, but it's very similar to the other buildings we've seen. And then last, the most difficult building, I think, to understand, if you go to the next slide, is the market, because of its geometry, how it fits on the site, and so I'll try to do my best to explain it to you, if you can follow it. So this, in the larger picture, is what we call the front of the building, or the main customer entrance, which is rotated from your key plan off to the left. So I apologize for any confusion there. And that front or elevation that you would want to see as a customer, as a shopper of the supermarket, is shown here as elevation number 2. Unusual in that it has a large amount of glass on that facade, so that'll be very attractive, I think. What you're looking at here is the delivery or truck dock area, and although it looks like it's on the front, as you can see from this plan, it's tucked way back, so that it really will not be very visible to most of the folks that are parking or shopping. It's pulled almost 2/3 of the way back in the plan. So that's what we're calling the front. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to start with these 3 elevations. And again, it's a little bit difficult because they are elevations and they're not sort of 3D drawings, but as you can see, the variety of shapes and color tones on this drawing, they are mainly because we have large expanses, as you might expect in a building of this size and use, that are without the opportunity to have windows. So what the architect for the supermarket has done in their prototype is they have varied the height and materials of these facades to create some interest along the long facades, and even introduce glass in certain areas. So this elevation that we're looking at here at the top is the east elevation. So it is the elevation that is facing the turnpike. And then below that, you have both north and south elevations. So north might be, is really the elevation that you would see as you enter the site along the entry drive. And they've introduced, there'll be some signage. There are some clear story windows that are introduced there to add some interest. The material palette, as I mentioned before, is a fairly neutral palette. So you see the materials vary from a dark charcoal to a galvanized aluminum metal finish to a very light dove gray finish on the phenolic panels. So it's a combination of metal phenolic panels, which are a large laminate panel. And then there is some concrete block that's painted or that has a colored finish. And it's along that truck dock area. That's really the only other area that you see at the bottom of your screen on the, what is this, south elevation. You start to see some of that block on that side. And there is a little, if we go back one slide, you can see that the standards for the finishes are here. And as I mentioned, everything, there's pretty neutral palette. This is a concrete block here, and then some of the metal phenolic panels in here. And the only real color is a very bright color, but it's just a splash of it. There's not very much. It's kind of like a small accent. So it may be very difficult for you to see. It certainly is for me on the screen, but the color key for these materials are a letter code, and they key into these elevations here. So there's very little of this, and it's mainly a neutral palette. Any questions? Excellent. All right, well, thank you very much.
I do have a question. I'm sorry, I missed the point. I unmuted. If the supermarket is designed for, particular type of company, which one are you proposing?
Which company?
Yes.
We're not at a liberty to disclose that information.
Okay.
It's very exciting. Can I tell you that much?
I'm just curious.
I don't blame you.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think at this point, Christine, if you could please go through the residential component.
Good evening. I'm Christine Castaldo with Marcus Square Architects, working with Criterion for the design of the residential component of the project. What's depicted here is one of the three main residential structures. This is the one in the northeast corner, which we're proposing as the entry building that wraps the outdoor amenity and will house the leasing office and indoor amenities. It's very preliminary in design. The building may change a little bit during development of the interior. We'll be looking to articulate the facade a little bit more in the future, but basically our exterior aesthetic was inspired by two local historic farms in Newington, the Eddy and Deming Young farms, which are not far. It is a farmhouse style. It presents sloped roofs with some pronounced gables. At this entry element, the gables are a little bit steeper. We're proposing some large timber brackets in these gables. The exterior materials will be a mixture of clapboard siding in varying colors. The colors are not yet selected, but the ones we're showing here, we're using a stronger, bolder color to highlight the entries of the building. There will be white trim corner boards and surrounding the openings, and then some stone veneer at the high touch points, the main entries, surrounding the columns at the main entries, and we have we're showing some metal roofs at the main entry to the amenity component there. And then if we want to go to the next slide, Criterion has provided some photos of some existing properties to better show the level of quality of finishes and the landscaping. And then to the next slide, their outdoor amenities and the level of finishes and furniture that'll be shown, that will be also in our amenity space outside. And then the next slide depicts the level of quality of the interior amenities.
Thank you, Christine. If there aren't any other questions or any questions for Christine, we could move on to the next topic, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Claffey.
Question on the apartments. Are they all market rate apartments? I saw that you divvy them up into studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom.
Chris Smith, for the record, that's correct. They're all market rate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, you can proceed.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Don Poland, who will discuss some of the economics and fiscal aspects of the project.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, Don Poland with Goman York Associates based in East Hartford, Connecticut. Next slide, please. I provided you with a detailed report, I believe approximately 30 pages, looking at the landscape of retail, the economic and fiscal impacts of the development. And I just want to provide you with a quick overview and summary of that report this evening. So the retail sector overview, the retail apocalypse is real, but it's nuanced. It's hit certain sectors, certain types of properties, such as large regional malls, department stores, and so forth. The fact is bricks and mortar will persist if it can innovate. And the innovation is really this shift to the to the mixed use development, the co-location of retail and housing. The planning challenge ultimately is not to resist change, but to embrace and manage change as it occurs within a community. And adaptation is the foundation to resilience. We believe that this proposed plan for 333 Berlin Turnpike is about adaptability and can position this property in the area to compete and to prosper. Essentially, the applicants are seeking to innovate to create a hybrid mixed-use community. Next slide. So one of the key things of understanding, because we're ultimately moving towards school enrollments and understanding the impacts and municipal fiscal impacts related to education and general government budgets. The key to understanding that is really understanding demographics and demographic structure of a community. I say this matter of factly, Newington is aging. And if we look here at this chart, you see our median age compared to Connecticut and the United States. While 3 or 4 years difference may not seem significant in raw numbers, in the world of demographics, it is significant. And as a society as a whole, on a national scale, on a statewide scale, on a regional scale, we also have declining fertility rates. They have been declining since the 1950s. And that ultimately means that we have fewer children than we previously had. If you look at your housing stock, 71% of it is single family, 64% is single family detached, 78% is owner occupied, and 58% is 3 bedrooms or more. Basically, your existing housing stock is built for families with children. But even when we evaluate your existing housing stock, the number of occupied units, and divided into the number of enrollments in your public school system, you're only generating 0.32 enrollments per existing housing unit. I'd lay that out there at the start of this because it's so easy for us to assume every housing unit produces 1, 2, or 3 children. And the fact is less than a third of your housing is producing school enrollments. Next slide, please. Changes in demographic structure or household structure. This chart on the top right is one of my favorite graphics. And the fact that it looks at kind of what was the household structure of families in 1970s America compared to 2012. And over that 42-year period, what we ultimately see is a dramatic change. The bottom segment of that is married couples with children. In 1970, made up 40% of the households. Today, in 2012, 19.6%. Today, around 17.5%. At the top, we see women living alone and men living alone. In 1960, only 13% of households were single person. Today, nationally, it's around 29%. Those are dramatic shifts, and that's why we are not ultimately, or why housing is not producing or generating the large numbers of enrollments within our school systems. It explains how from 2008 to 2017, you could add 227 housing units, new construction in Newington, but at the same time lose 497 enrollments. It's because this contraction in the size of households, the reduction in number of children, and also the increases in the large individual single person occupied housing. Next slide. So school district enrollments, you're not unique. They've been declining statewide. Most suburban communities are experiencing declines, and in some communities, very significant. Recently did work in a community that's over the same time period has lost 2,000 students from their school system. You've declined from 4,566 to 3,974 between 2008 and 2020. That's a reduction of 592 enrollments over that period of time. This graphic down at the bottom right, this chart shows new housing construction in Connecticut from 1960 to 2018. As you can see, there was a point in time when we built a lot of housing. Today we build far fewer housing. And that's due to the change in our demographic structure, the fact that we have stagnant population growth, stagnant job growth, and so forth. Most important, though, that I think on this chart, if you look at the last few years, 2012 through 2018 here, the thing I want to point out is you'll notice that nearly 50% of the housing being constructed today is multifamily housing. And that's representative of the changing demographic structure of our population. The more single persons and the fewer family households. So ultimately, this shift towards multifamily housing isn't just about zoning, isn't just about, the desires of developers. It's the housing that's serving the needs of the population today. Next slide. So I went through and did an analysis of our development, the residential component, the 269 units being proposed, broken down by the types of units that are being proposed, the studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Using the Rutgers demographic multipliers, which is a statistically valid set of multipliers based on new housing construction and the generation of school-age children, and also based on research I've done myself over the past 13 years doing these studies. When we run these numbers, we basically come up with the total number of enrollments generated from this development will be 57 students. However, when we adjust for new to district, students that will be new to the school district, not students that are already within it and have this as a new address, we use an estimate amount of 50% for new to district. Actually, most of the recent studies on new to district enrollments and new developments show that they typically run between 13 and 30%. So we're being very conservative, overestimating here, saying 50% of the students will be new to district. Next slide, please. I then do a series of 4 calculations to actually determine the cost of those those enrollments into the school district. It's very common for people to take the total education budget. You guys have a $76 million education budget and divide it by your enrollments and say that every student or every new student costs us $18,950. Yes, in some ways it does, but the fact is not every new enrollment actually causes all new spending. So there's fixed costs. Like you don't hire a new superintendent or a new principal every time you add an enrollment. Your utility costs, your facility maintenance costs, most of that stuff does not change. So I make adjustments to account for these various things. The first adjustment I make is local share of expenditures, because we're talking about municipal property tax impact, and a portion of your budget comes from sources other than municipal property tax. So that's the local share reduction down to 15,800. I then do the allocated expenditure. That is the portions of the education budget, like the superintendent's office or the utilities that aren't impacted by enrollments. Ultimately, we come down to about $10,000 per enrollment as an actual cost of educating those children. Then I provide you the calculations for if it was full 57 enrollments as new, or the new to district projection of 30 enrollments. And what we see here is $308,000 for new to district enrollments. Next slide, please. So this is a summary then of all the calculations made throughout my report to come up with the municipal fiscal impact. We estimated the property tax value of the 268 units at $3,000 per unit. That's comparable tax value to other similar developments in the greater Hereford region. We feel that's a good and reliable number. Real property tax is estimated for the 79,000 square feet of commercial space. And then we also adjusted for or accounted for the motor vehicles associated with the residential development. We estimate 403 motor vehicles at approximately, based on information from your current budget, at approximately $330 per vehicle for an additional $132 in tax revenues. So 1.3 million in new revenues. Deduct out the school expenditures of 308,000. We then make detailed calculations to adjust for the residential share of general government services and the commercial development share of general government services. We deduct those numbers out an additional 245,000. Therefore, we end up with a municipal fiscal impact that's $774,000 positive to the municipality after the cost. I also want to make it clear that there's approximately $436,000 in one-time development fees. That's the land use permitting and the building permitting process. Next slide, please. We also took a look at job creation. The construction jobs are always harder to estimate. We use some multipliers based on construction costs to estimate those, and we assume here 170 construction jobs that will be created or sustained. And then the permanent jobs is a much stronger, a much more confident number based on, we know what types of tenants, what types of businesses are going to be operating these properties, and we have really good data on kind of the retail sector and employment staffing levels. So 242 jobs created on site based on the businesses that are there. And then we did some calculations related to disposable income and consumer spending. Total disposable income generated by the 269 residential households will be approximately 11.6 million. And then we make an adjustment, recognizing that people don't spend all their disposable income in the town that they live. We make an adjustment for what we believe the local consumer spending will total, and that's at $4.6 million. Next slide. I thank you for your time, and I'm available for questions if you have them.
Do any commissioners have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I move on with some closing remarks, I do just want to state for the record that we are in receipt of reports from staff. One dated May 10th from the town engineer, town planner's report, as well as report, I believe, from Mr. Eric Hinckley. We did go through those, and we do know that there's some additional comments forthcoming on the traffic report that was submitted and highlighted tonight by Mr. Dion, as well as further review by the town engineer's office on the drainage report. I would just like to add that we did not see anything as of now that we could not address. For instance, there was a comment about extending the 25-foot wide road from Payne Road through the parking lot. We believe that that can be accommodated. There's some clarifications in Mr. Hinckley's report that we also believe that they're housekeeping items. There is some requests for some easement language. We don't know what that language would be. So we can't say that we would just blanketly agree to them. But I do just want to say that most of everything that or all of everything at this point, we understand it, makes sense. And we don't think that there's anything that we can't address at this point. But to move on with some, as I said, with some closing remarks and really some housekeeping regarding consistency with the POCD for these special permits that we're asking for. Jessica, if you could move on to the next slide. Just in summary, your POCD discusses the need to have diversity in housing from the studios to the 3-bedroom units. We believe that the housing will accommodate the younger generation as well as older persons that currently reside in the town of Newington, and people that are in different stages of their lives. I won't go through all of these, but we believe that many items are covered and can help the town achieve the policies and goals of the POCD regarding the housing market specific to that petition of the application. Next slide, please. The Berlin Turnpike is certainly a very important economic driver and engine for the town of Newington, and is very well stated and covered in the POCD as such an asset. And then that this development will certainly reutilize an underutilized site and promote redevelopment within the area as well as economic growth. Next slide, please. And again, there are a number of ways or options and opportunities here to continue with economic growth, from new buildings and infrastructure to attract new businesses, newer architectural features from an attractiveness and an aesthetic standpoint at sort of a southern gateway to the town of Newington, as well as supporting the regional retail market. Next slide, please. And then infrastructure. The infrastructure is in place. We did submit for the record a letter we received from the MDC confirming that they can supply and service this property, this development, with regard to water supply and sewage collection as well. So that is in hand, and we have been coordinating with them for this project, as well as we are on a public transit corridor, and for people that want alternative modes for transportation, either to and or from work, or to services that will be provided within the development itself. And I believe with that, I would like to turn it back to Attorney Smith, perhaps for some closing remarks.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. I don't know if the commission has any questions for us at this point, but I respectfully submit on behalf of the team that the proposal does satisfy the criteria for special permit approval provided in section 5.2 of your regulations, and in particular 5.26. And Dennis did make reference to some of those sections when he was making comparisons in referencing the provisions in your plan of conservation and development, or your POCD. And on behalf of the Grossman Development Group and Criterion Development Partners, we thank you for the opportunity to present this proposal, exciting proposal, to you this evening. And we look forward to continuing the work with the commission and your professional staff as we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Smith. Commissioner Woods, do you have a question?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. It was a very interesting presentation. Thank you. The only thing I didn't hear through it is signage. Are you going to address signage at a later point? Will there be a freestanding sign on the Turnpike Payne Road, or will the signage just be on the buildings? I don't think we really talked about that, or I heard anything when it comes to signage.
Dennis, you want to respond to that?
I certainly can. Mr. Armenta, I believe in his architectural discussion, had shown suggestions to tenant signage on the building. We did not submit an application specific to signs at this point. So there certainly would be some signage along the streets. We didn't discuss whether there would be a sign along Payne Road, but there isn't anything at this point included in our application, but would likely come back at a later date for a an application specific for signage.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is the connection between residential and commercial. That is intended, again, and it was said through the presentation that it will be open, but even after construction, the intent is to keep that open through the project, right, through the life of the project.
That is,
Chris Smith, yes, go ahead, Dennis.
I was gonna say that is correct, and as part of the recent text amendment that became effective yesterday, there would be easements that would be in place in perpetuity that access point would need to remain open in order to have that free flow between the residential and the commercial at the Berlin Turnpike.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Commissioner Sobieski, do you have a question?
Yes, actually a comment too. I'm very pleased with these plans that I said earlier. Extremely pleased with the drainage plan. I think the car tax estimate was a little low in my opinion that the doctor had posted. I'm just curious, what is the total height to the highest point of the building? Didn't hear that. I was just curious on that.
Are you speaking of the residential or the commercial?
No, the residential.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, if I may, the building height maximum is 4 stories, and that's what we are proposing. And as Christine Castaldo had mentioned, the architectural plans are still, I guess, a work in progress and are draft at this point. But we're certainly looking at pitched roofs as have been identified. So the actual height there has been finalized.
All right, thank you very much again. I'm very pleased with the plans. This is out of the years I've been on here, which is 10. This is one of the most comprehensive set of plans I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Gill.
Yes, I was wondering, are there any solar possibilities with either the commercial or the residential?
We have not identified any at this point. I suppose at a later date, but that might be integrated into it, but there isn't anything proposed at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, hearing none, I'd like to open this up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak in favor of this application? Rose Lyons, go right ahead.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see the beginning of the presentation because I don't know what the problem was with NCTV or whether it was Cox Communications, which is my provider, but I have caught the last hour or so of the presentation. It seems like a great project. Seems like something that would be well suited for Newington, something that I look forward to see happen, and I hope you approve it. I'm hoping, though, that perhaps maybe some of the plans or the sketches or whatever would be available on the town website, and if they can be, there'd be an easy link to see them. I don't know whether you plan on moving this forward to old business tonight or not, but if something could be on the town website, I'm sure that some of the other residents would like to see it, not just myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak in favor? Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Renata, do you have anything? Renata, do you have anything that has to be read into the minutes?
Mr. Chair, yes, I do. So I have forwarded by email to you a letter that came from essentially Newington, from town of Newington employee, from Steve Kosovsky, who is tax assessor, as well as the member of Town of Newington Economic and Development Team, together with me and the town manager. If you want, I can read this into the record, or you can have a secretary.
Yeah, no, Renata, could you read that into the minutes, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. So this memo was, this letter was sent on May 10, 2021. It's dated May 10, 2021. And it is with regards to 333 Berlin Turnpike, addressed to the members of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening, and I hope this meeting finds you all safe and well. I'm writing to you to voice my independent support for the proposed property development at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. It is my understanding that there are several special permit petitions being requested by developers who are proposing to build a mixed-use development, including residential apartments and retail shops and services. As the town assessor, I am a member of the economic development team along with the town manager and the town planner. I'm responsible for valuing all taxable property, which when totaled produces the grand list, which is the basic of the major source of funding for our annual municipal budget. The key to a healthy financial community is the ability to draw responsible economic development that can offset the amount of property tax that its residents are forced to bear. For the last several years, economic development has been extremely sluggish, and as a result, Newington has one of the higher mill rates in the area, which further acts as a deterrent to future economic development. The proposal at 3333 Berlin Turnpike is exactly the type of significant economic development that can jumpstart the Newington economy and act as a catalyst for other developers to consider Newington. I'm excited at the prospect for this new development being approved, and I wanted to voice my support for this proposed development. Sincerely, Stephen Kosowski, Town Assessor. In addition to that, I would like to acknowledge that the original correspondence that was read under the public comment section of this meeting, at least the way I understood it, was also an actual letter in support of this application. And thirdly, there is another email that I also had sent to the commission that I received from one of our residents in town that was in support, and he had raised a few questions.
Could you read that into the minutes too, please?
Yes, it's going to take me a minute. Just give me a minute.
No problem. And thank you for correcting me. I probably should have read that other one in this public hearing instead of the first public hearing. I thank you for correcting that.
Just hold on a second. Let me find. I apologize that it's taking this long. It's
That's okay.
Navigating with it.
Commissioner Haggerty, do you have a question?
I was just gonna say I have the email in front of me. I'm happy to read it or.
And I just pulled it out myself. So
go ahead, Renata.
So this came from Mike Phelps, dated May 11. Hi, I generally don't comment a lot on TPZ items, so I apologize if I'm asking the wrong person. I read with interest your comments on the proposed development at 3333 Berlin Turnpike. I think it would be a great addition to the town and had a couple of questions I was hoping you may be able to help answer or direct me to the right person. Bullet number 1, I see they're planning to request a new intersection / traffic light on Berlin Turnpike. As this is a state highway, isn't that generally a very long process to approve review, let alone actually construct? Can the TPZ put limits on construction of, say, the commercial space until the intersection is approved and or added? I would think that without an intersection on the turnpike, it would greatly increase traffic on Payne Road. Bullet number 2, I see no plans to add a traffic light at the access road on Payne Road. While the sightlines may be acceptable, that is a pretty bad curve, and adding a light similar to one by Payne-Maselli would be required. However, it would need to be timed with the turnpike as the traffic does back up and there is a congestion with the small businesses and the Mr. Sparkle's car wash. Bullet number 3, does TPZ request accident information from Newington Police Department, i.e. there were X accidents over the last 5 years on Payne Road between Berlin Turnpike and Maselli Road, or would that be incumbent upon residents to ask? Bullet number 4, will there be any traffic assessment done at Payne and Church? As part of this project, could a left turn line be added on Payne westbound to Church northbound? Traffic routinely backs up there during rush hour in addition to several accidents. With additional traffic, residents on Payne Road, I think this intersection needs to be reviewed in accordance with any development. Signed, Mike Phelps of 108 Tremont Street, Newington.
Thank you very much, Renata. That's all?
Those are the public hearing items that I received, yes.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak in favor of the application? Hearing none, is there anybody wishing to speak again in opposition? Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the applicant in case he would like to add anything else.
For the record, Chris Smith, and I'll defer to Dennis. Anything you feel we should address at this point?
I don't believe at this point there is.
Okay.
I think we're set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Chris Smith, for the record.
Okay, thank you very much. Renata, has the staff, engineering, and yourself and Eric, have you had enough time to review all the plans? Do you feel comfortable with the review of the traffic and the engineering? What's the status of that, please?
So Mr. Chair, as I had indicated in my memo, and that hasn't really changed. Overall speaking, I am in support of this proposal. I think it's a great project. I think it's designed in an attractive way that complements the location that it is proposed for. And I think that it is consistent and compatible with both our regulations as well as our plan of conservation and development. That being said, we have received this traffic report a little bit late. And the reason for that is that the applicant is simultaneously trying to obtain this permit from the DOT, from the State Department of Transportation. So because they were working with them, they weren't really able to finalize this earlier. At least that's my understanding of what's going on here. Then again, you know, there are two separate pads that you're looking at. There will be 5 special permits, each with its own associated site plans. I said in my memo, the applicant is not necessarily tying a specific restaurant or specific brewery club, which is a subject to getting a special permit, to a specific location. They have identified likely buildings but they left it kind of open, which is smart of them, in my opinion. And I think it's also smart for the commission to think of it as a project that is kind of interchangeable. The other minor comment that I had was with regards to the architecture. I had recommended that they perhaps relook the back portions of the buildings, particularly facing residential development, and whether or not there is sufficient screening between the two to kind of cover those service areas. And then anything that's visible from Berlin Turnpike should look like a front of the building rather than, and back of the building. But those are all minor tweaks. If the commission is satisfied with their presentation on traffic, and if you think that you will not have questions or that you will not need to hear from us, the staff, which again, we haven't completed a review and commenting on traffic, and there are some outstanding comments on the drainage design that are still being worked out between the engineers. If you could, I suppose, close the public hearing, but if you're going to wait on staff to provide their comments on these two items, traffic and stormwater, then I recommend you keep the hearing open tonight. And the last thing that I wanted to comment is the parking space deferral. Again, they originally presented a deferral of 57 spaces. That came down to a ratio of 1.8 something per unit. They're proposing an increase to that, and that was just presented tonight. But that one, I can tell you right now, my comment is that I will support it. I believe our parking requirements are too high. We require 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, and that's too high for developments like this. And the best way to deal with that is actually through these referral processes. Just so that it's really clear for everybody, they're not seeking a waiver. They're seeking a deferral of construction, which means they will show on the site plan and construct all of the supporting infrastructure, drainage, and anything that's necessary to treat stormwater if this parking ever in the future is requested to be built. So in closing, I'm good with absolutely everything here, except that I truly don't feel that I can comment on traffic. And I have not received final comments from engineering regarding the drainage.
Renata, the drainage is part of our site plan, so that wouldn't really be part of the public hearing. The traffic would be, though, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Claffey, do you have a question?
Yes, a question for Mr. Smith, and he can defer it if he needs to. I may have missed it during the whole presentation, but this project, is it going to be built in any type of phases? Or is it when you start to build it, you're going to start with everything from the residential to the commercial, et cetera, et cetera?
Great question, Commissioner Claffey.
That is a very good question, and I will defer, if I may, Commissioner, to Dennis on that one.
For the
'Cause
record, Dennis,
I'm not 100% sure, and I don't want to be incorrect in representing anything to you.
For the record, Dennis Godere with BL Companies. Our client and the applicant is looking for the flexibility to construct it as the market demands. On the residential side, it would be likely that one building would go up first, perhaps as that one approaches completion. Another building or both might get started simultaneously. It all depends on how the market is at the time, and the same would be on the commercial. The anchor for that development is the supermarket. That would be the first to be constructed. And then other buildings would be coming online roughly the same time or shortly thereafter. Again, that will depend on the market. It is conceivable that the construction could be happening simultaneously between both, and our erosion control methods would be able to respond to that.
Okay, I only asked because early in the meeting you spoke of a completion date of 2024. So it's a good 2+ years out. That's why. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Any other questions from the commissioners? How do the commissioners feel about the traffic plan that was presented to us tonight? Commissioner Claffey?
The only, I like the traffic plan that was presented. I do understand that the Berlin, and I'm to understand, let me rephrase that the traffic approval denial on what they presented tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the Berlin Turnpike is based on what the state of Connecticut says. I guess my question on the traffic is, who is handling the Payne Road side? Is that our engineering department in correlation with the state or no?
Renata?
Here, if I may through you. So the Payne Road exit is the one where it's going to come down to our engineering, our traffic authority, and myself to come up with the best review comments for you. 3 of us together will have to read this and review it and analyze it.
So with that being said, depending on how we all want to act tonight, is there concern from you as representing the town in regards to the traffic? To, you sounded kind of a little iffy on the traffic.
Right.
Do we hold off on that because we got too many items that need to be resolved, or we got, a half a dozen that need to be resolved? I've seen some things hit our TPZ with 4 pages of issues, but when you nailed it down, it was like, well, he forgot to put his name on the legend type thing.
So if I may, in this instance, it's not like that at all.
Okay.
The only issue truly is that this is a 500-page report that we only received on Friday. I gave it to engineering on Monday. We need to read through it off the spot. This was something that we had discussed with applicants early on. I am certain that they designed it in a way that is not very likely to generate comments, period. But I haven't read it. I can't comment. So it comes to that. Like, I don't believe there is anything wrong with it. I just can't really comment.
Okay. And I just thought of a second question. And this is to any of either our town employees, Renata or Mr. Hinckley. Has any other department, we talk about the doctor spoke of the school impact and the reporting there. Has any other department in our town come to you guys and spoke of a problem with seeing this? Any other kind of yay, nay from, Board of Ed is a large portion of our tax base. And, just as anyone come out and said, oh my God, I can't wait for this to happen. Or, oh my God, I have concerns of how it may impact our utilities, our police, our fire, our school, et cetera, et cetera.
No, nobody spoke to me in those terms. And frankly, anything that I received in a way of correspondence was presented under the public.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes, as far as the traffic goes, anything happens on the Turnpike, and I believe anything happens on Payne Road, OSTA will have to approve it. But like I said, I think the traffic flow looks good. I wish him luck in trying to get a signal there. I know with the new modernization going through the computerization of the signals, it should flow a little better. As far as the Payne Road at Church Street intersection, I don't know, it may be something that the town should really look at. I do know it does back up in that area. I don't know if this is going to adversely affect that or not. But again, I think it's from the traffic point of view and from the drainage point of view, it looks good. I do know about the issue of flooding down by the car wash there, but that's been there for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. I think it might be wise that we leave this public hearing open. I think that I would want our town planner and our staff to read the traffic thoroughly, the report thoroughly. And I would ask the applicant if he could, there is a problem up at the Church Street, Payne Road intersection. It does back up late in the afternoon. And it backs up sometimes almost to Maselli Road. I think that it's a timing issue when people are leaving the industrial park. And it could be a simple change of the lighting timing. And I would ask if the applicant could have their traffic look at that and possibly report on that for our next meeting.
We will, for the record, Chris Smith, we will do that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. If there's no objection, we'll leave this public hearing open. Is that in agreement with everybody?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Renata?
Mr. Chair, just for the maintenance of the best record on this, if you would not mind reading the petition numbers and stating that this hearing has been continued to May 26th, and it is going to be a virtual reading, just meeting, just in case anybody's out there watching this right now.
Thank you, Renata.
Thank
So petition 19-21, petition 20-21, petition 21-21, petition 22-21, and petition 23-21 of 3333 Berlin Turnpike is going to be continued to May 26th with the public hearing still open. Is everybody in agreement to that?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? Anybody oppose? Very good. We're going to leave this open, and I want to thank the applicant very much. It was a fantastic report, and like Commissioner Sobieski said, it was very thorough, and we greatly appreciate it. And we hope you understand that we just need a little bit more time to review some things.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Chris Smith, I absolutely no problem with that. We look forward to returning on the 26th, but just also for the record, the remote hearing on May 26th will be at 7 p.m. as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I was doing that for Renata's benefit. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Have a nice evening. Stay well.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank your entire team. Okay. Renata, do you want to, we don't have any other new business. The old business we're not going to talk about. So under petitions for scheduling, we have quite a few things. Could we go over how it's going to work for our next meeting?
Well, yes. So the meeting will start by the public hearing, which is a continuation of the 333 Berlin Turnpike. We will at the next meeting also have 155 Lordley Place. And then following that, we're currently in review of plans. So what you see for public hearing scheduling may or may not actually be presented to you next, depending on.
Yeah, okay. I was just worried about that they were all coming on to us at the next meeting. So you're indicating.
We will see. We're reviewing these plans, and it depends on how close they are to be prepared to be before you. I mean, if we're still working on addressing comments and changes, it's better to not have them at the next meeting.
Very,
Again, you're looking at the proposed car wash on 16 Fen. They had applied for the re-subdivision and the special permit. These two petitions for subdivision at Connecticut Avenue are actually here by mistake. I have new staff. Subdivisions do not require public hearings, so but you will also have them as like a normal business item together with a special permit application.
okay. Do you have anything else, Renata, for us under your town planner's report?
So under town planners report, I will inform you that in addition to the applications that I just showed you, we have also received an application from Gibbs somebody. I don't remember the actual title, but it is a petition for the regulation amendment, and it is at that location on intersection of West Hill Road and Willard Avenue. This was, I understand, discussed with the Planning Commission earlier last summer in 2020 in summer. So they're proposing some changes to the PD zone regulations, and they're also going to come in with the development plan for which they will need special permit. We are still updating and posting this future agenda online, which is available for everybody to look. And I really encourage our residents to get informed on what's coming down pipeline for your meetings by using this document. We have heard the question if some of these documents that were presented today could be posted online. They are going to be posted online, but also everything that is included in the Planning Commission packet, which generally includes the plans and architectural drawings, is posted online. So if somebody would like to know how to access that, it's a link that you would click. Please call our office and we will guide you through how to access that. So we try to post everything that we can as far ahead as we possibly can online for people to be able to see. And that is all that I have for right now.
Thank you very much, Renata. No communications? Except for the CROG we received.
There is one letter that we received from the Department of Transportation, and it has actually been sent to the engineer, that is proposing a gas station and convenience store at Main Street and 4 Hartford Avenue. I believe that's that property, kitty corner or next to Yanni's, that I was asked some question about. So they seem to be moving forward with that process because the DOT has issued them an approval.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Okay, we're at public participation. Is there anybody from the public that has anything? Remarks by commissioners? Any commissioners have any remarks? Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, Rob, is that form that you got is a standard form that's issued to any developer on a state highway. It basically tells them how much the performance bond has to be put up for the contractor and the liability. That's a general issue out of district. This one happens to come out of District 1. They come out of all the districts. Thank you.
Commissioner Claffey?
One question I have, I've seen them popping up. I know we're under still executive order, but how are we handling, if at all, the temporary tents that I'm seeing pop up on the Berlin Turnpike not for eating or any of that, but just for people's or stores' product for sales, et cetera, et cetera. Just want to know how we're handling that. I know how we handle it pre-pandemic, and how we handled the firework displays, but now I'm starting to see jacuzzi sales and parking lots, et cetera, et cetera. So just want to know how we're handling that.
Please send me an email with addresses. We have authorized, the commission has authorized me to permit outdoor dining areas.
Okay.
Under our change to the regulations, but that's all that I have been doing. Just restaurants and tents for restaurants require building permits. I have not had issued any approvals for tent for like temporary sales like that.
Okay. I'll send it in the morning. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Is there any other commissioners have any questions? Okay, I'm all set. I think we did a great job tonight. I want to thank Renata. Thank you, James. Commissioners. If there's nothing else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Sobieski, motion to adjourn.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second, Claffey.
Second by Claffey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good
Dom.
night, everyone.
Good night.